Terry Crews odiaba a su padre.
A lot of my desire to be strong was because I knew one day I may have to father.
Y es que su infancia fue un terrible infierno.
You know, one of my earliest memories around, the time I was about 4 or 5 years old was my father knocking my mother out.
Aunque Terry aparenta ser un hombre fuerte, incluso hasta su adultez, tuvo que lidiar con los abusos de su papá.
And I get a call from my aunt. She's like, "Oh my God, your father hit your mother." And I'm like, "What?" And I said, "Did my kids see it?" And she said, "Yes, Terry."
Según cuenta el mismo actor, una triste constante en su vida fue ver cómo su propio padre bebía de más y lastimaba a su madre, algo que marcó un antes y un después en su vida.
My father was very, very abusive. And, one of my earliest memories around, the time I was about 4 or 5 years old was my father knocking my mother out. And what was really crazy, he was an alcoholic. And here you have a man who came from, he really never shared his past with me. I had to actually find out a lot about his past later on in my adult years. And I just wanted peace, man. It was just violent. I actually wet the bed until I was 14 years old because there was not a peaceful night. I would wake up to screaming, wake up to glass breaking, shouting. One time I woke up, my father was bleeding. My mother had stabbed him, and the police came. And in that day, it was like, there was no such thing as domestic, just like there was no such thing as alcoholism.
Su infancia fue tan dura que Crews reveló que se volvió fuerte en caso de que necesitara a su padre abusivo.
One thing my mom did let me do was comic books. And so I would copy the comic books and the heroes, and they had muscles. And I was like, one day I'm going to be like that. And but I also found out, which was so wild, a little bit later, even in therapy, was just that I found that a lot of my desire to be strong was because I knew one day I may have a father, because he was just that person. And it was intense, man. Like I say, it was a very, very intense upbringing. And I became this person who just wanted to keep the peace, because anything to keep the peace. I became what you would call a pleaser. Like, Mom, what do you need to do? I'll be a good boy. I promise. I'll sing in the church. I'll sing in the choir. And then my father would come home. It was like, what, do you want another beer? Whatever you want. I'll just make sure you don't get angry.
Sin embargo, tras ese intenso deseo de ser grande y fuerte, se escondía un niño con miedo que buscaba defender a su madre.
Did you ever try and intervene at a young age?
He was too big. I mean, it was one of those things where I felt helpless. I felt 100% like I was so small. And you just look, and I have to say, my father, even to this day, we call him Big Terry. He was always Big Terry, and I was Little Terry. And this is how we referred to each other all over the house. And my older brother is my half brother. So he was smaller than me. And I just always felt tiny. I remember just looking at his hands, and they were big, giant, calloused hands. And the way he'd walk around the house, you just hear boom, boom, boom. It was a drama. It was like, man, this man could rip me apart. And I had a desire to get strong. I knew I had to one day would have to protect my mom, protect my family, because I remember the nightly news, and they would always tell you all the horror stories. So-and-so kills his whole family, I was always look at the TV and I would say, I think my father could do that.
No obstante, el actor trabaja diariamente en controlar la ira que su padre causó en él desde muy pequeño, momentos de violencia que lamentablemente también vivió cuando ya era un adulto.
And we were driving to Detroit with me and my wife to go see our friends, and we get a call. We're literally 10 minutes into the ride, and I get a call from my aunt. She's like, "Oh my God, your father hit your mother." And I'm like, "What?" He was drinking. Somehow the holidays brings out the alcohol. Everybody wants to drink on the alcohol. It's really activating, triggering for alcoholics. And I said, "Did my kids see it?" She said, "Yes, Terry. They saw it. They were
Your
right
kids
there."
saw it?
My kids were there.
How old were you?
Oh, I was, I just started, so I was about 31, 32 years old. And yeah, man, I couldn't believe it because I told them, I said, man, my kids have never come up in this. They've never seen this, you know? And I had 3 daughters at the time, and I have 5 now, but I couldn't believe it. And they were just shocked. They had never been in that.
Y es que este duro momento que presenciaron sus hijas, Terry no lo dejó pasar por alto y se encargó de poner a su abusivo padre en su lugar.
And I said, damn it. Man, I did a U-turn. I said, listen, take the kids, take them over your house, make sure it's just me and Big Terry in that house. Understand? Make sure of it. She got the kids out, the whole thing. Dude, I roll up in that house. I said, hey, man, didn't I tell you? He said, oh, man, shut up, man. Get out of my face. Pow! Hit him dead in his mouth. And there it was. I was like, man, all those times you beat my mother up, all those times I was running around 5 years old, scared, couldn't do nothing, froze up. I'm bigger than your ass now, huh? How you like that? Pow! Pow! He's screaming at me to stop. He's screaming, and I'm just wailing on him, man. And I'm like, no, how you like that? This is how she felt.
And you're crying while you're doing this.
I beat his ass, and I'm in tears. But listen to me, man. It was nothing. It was empty.
Pero pese a todo lo negativo de su vida, en esta búsqueda de fortalecerse, Cruz se convirtió en un exitoso jugador de la NFL antes de retirarse del juego en 1997 para seguir su carrera como actor, y hoy se ha ganado el cariño de todo su público.